Greetings, RAISE community. Brent coming in live from Tucson, Arizona with Megan Morey, the Vice President for College Relations at Williams College. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, nice to be here.
Well, I've really been looking forward to this conversation. And one of the things we've done to kick off recent discussions on the RAISE podcast is to not only kind of learn a little bit about your background, but really frame it through the lens of your own college experience, which I know in your case did directly contribute to your work in the advancement space. So take us back to Megan, senior year of high school, and the decision to go to Ohio Wesleyan University and what that experience was like. Where were you? Who were you? Let's go.
So it's probably a story that's only interesting to me and maybe my mother. I'm an identical twin, and my mom was a teacher, and we have three older brothers who all went off to college. And when it came time to look for a school, my mom directed me to look at liberal arts colleges, and my sister always knew she wanted to go to Ohio U and eventually get her master's there in sports marketing. And she's now kind of in a related industry, so that she's always been one of those people that I had no idea what I wanted to do. She knew exactly where she was headed, and she went there and has thrived from that moment on. So I didn't know what liberal arts was. We started looking around at schools, and there's so many wonderful schools in Ohio. And I set foot on the Ohio Wesleyan campus, and one of those kind of classic great tour guide, beautiful day, and I just knew I wanted to go there. So I ended up, I was lucky enough to get accepted and ended up going to Ohio Wesleyan. Majored in econ because my dad told me to, which is another one of those. You'll always get a job if you have an econ major. But I had no idea when it came time for my senior year of college to really know what I wanted to do. And I had been a student phone-a-thoner in the development office for the annual fund. Had a great director of the annual fund, Brad Bundy, who is at Miami of Ohio now, great guy. And he started to tell me that this could be a career and something to look into. And then I also had another great mentor who was kind of stuck with me through many years afterwards, Ron Stephanie, who was the vice president of development at Oberlin and had been the director of development at Ohio Wesleyan when I was there. He went on to Oberlin. And so they kind of convinced me to look at schools, and I was lucky enough to I interviewed for entry-level annual fund positions after I graduated. St. Lawrence offered me a job, but I thought it was too remote. So I turned it down because I was worried that the idea of socializing and working with the same people, I didn't think I was mature enough to handle that. And and I ended up at Denison, which was a great experience and fit. Although I've always been sad that I hadn't had the chance to work directly with Karen George, who has just been a wonderful kind of mentor to many and consultant most recently over the years.
Well, it's amazing it's amazing how small the advancement world is. And we were just catching up with Brad the other day, and it really is a kind of 1 degree separation industry. I have to ask though, and we know from many of our guests that the student phone-a-thon has been the gateway drug for advancement professionals for a long time. But what stood out during that experience? Any memorable experiences as a student caller, or even a moment where you were thinking, okay, this isn't just a student job, this could be a career?
I think, I started out calling, and just you had those cards and a phone that you dial. There were no headsets or anything. And then I was approached about being the manager and starting to do the hiring. So then I not only worked in the evenings and on weekends, but also went into the development office during the day. So I got to know all the adults that were working there and some of their different, the roles that they played. And I think that at that moment, it started to seem like something that could be interesting. And all my friends were interviewing for jobs in New York City. They were going to go work to live together and get jobs there. And I wasn't ready. I grew up in a rural part of Ohio, and that seemed really a bridge too far for me. So I found comfort on a college campus and have never left.
But after a few years, you did leave the Midwest.
I did. Yep. I followed a college boyfriend who was a golfer to North Carolina and ended up at a college called Barton College. And it was within, I'd say, 2 weeks, I discovered it was not a great fit for me. Kind of just the institution and kind of where my values were. It was a great place. I always think, I say to myself, like, we all have one opportunity to make a wrong decision, and you just can't make serial wrong decisions in your career. And that was it for me. I called Stephanie, and said, I think I made a mistake. And he said, oh, you have to stay at least 3 years. You can't job jump. It doesn't look good on your resume, which is an interesting topic, just as an aside, given millennial mindset. So, this is like, I feel like I'm really dating myself with these kind of, these beliefs. So I hunkered down, and then he called me about 6 months later and said, I'm now at the University of Redlands. We're looking for an annual fund director, and why don't you come out and take a look? And I said, I can't leave. No, I can't do it. You told me I had to stay, and I hung up. And the next morning I woke up thinking, I probably should just call him back and see if he'd still be entertain me coming out. And he did. And so then I ended up at Redlands, and I was there for 7 years, and that was a great experience. I kind of led the annual fund for a while, and then got into major gifts, and I really found a sweet spot.
Let's talk a little bit more about that 2-week in feeling, because there are probably people listening right now who maybe are feeling that, but are feeling a little bit stuck, or feeling like they need to stick it out for a year or two, or can't job hop. How did you, that is a tough position to be in, especially as a, junior professional, to immediately feel that kind of mismatch in fit or values or culture, whatever it may be, but also to then stick it out. So just tell me more about what the maybe few months after that decision were like, and how you sort of maintained optimism while in your heart maybe knowing it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah, I think I aligned myself with the people who were kind of strong leaders and partners in the work. I mean, there were many wonderful people that I worked with at that time. So it's just kind of trying to find those people and really, for lack of a better expression, keep your head down, I guess, and do the work and just push through. So that's kind of, and I'm somebody who, I think of myself as a pretty positive person and finding the good in stuff. So I don't remember a lot of bad things that happened in my past. I remember the good stuff. And when I think back to that time, I remember the people mostly that really who I worked with, who had similar feelings to me about for whatever reasons, what was going on at that institution at that moment in time. And so you find ways to find good. But I have to say, when I got to Redlands, that became a family, and it was a good fit. So if you're not feeling it, it does show up in the results of your work, and you're probably doing the institution a disservice, and in addition to yourself, by sticking it out too long. And I know that there's other factors that play into people's decisions and what keeps them in staying for longer than they should. But it's sometimes risks, or there's just a greater reward at the other end.
Well, coming out of college, you said the move to New York seemed like a bridge too far, but instead you went maybe even farther in mileage, at least, to Redlands. And it sounds like without mentorship, that probably wouldn't have been something you'd have been comfortable doing. But what was it like just kind of getting out of the Midwest, California vibes? I mean, yeah.
I loved it. I say everybody should have a California experience. Absolutely everybody. It was just culturally, I loved the idea that, and now being at a place like Williams, when, nobody cared where you went to college, and they just, it's such a mix, it's such a mixing bowl of people. At least it was for me. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And I'm very outdoor oriented. So just a chance to do all kinds of fun stuff when not working was wonderful. And it was Redlands is a really special place. It has its own loyal alumni base. And so that was fun to work with a group of people who were really dedicated to their jobs, and everybody was kind of rowing in the same direction. It was a lot of fun.
And you had a good run there. I mean, I think, you often see in this sector a couple of different profiles. There's a profile of maybe the job hopping you talked about, a lot of different jobs because whatever reason, maybe it was to advance, but it's almost like the military. You're just moving base to base to base, trying to move up in rank. Or you oftentimes see people who have been somewhere for 30 years and they've gone all in and it's been their one spot. You're in a position where it's kind of in between, which is you've gone really deep at a very small number of institutions, but it seems like the liberal arts mission has always been core to the roles that you've taken. I am curious. They're probably, once you go to California, it's hard to leave. But you not only went from LA and left, but you went to a pretty remote little corner of the world in Williamstown. How did that happen?
Well, I met my husband, who was in admission at Redlands, and we were married and had our son. And he's from the East Coast, and my family was all back here for the most part. And so I said I wanted to come back after I didn't want my children to not know their cousins, and so that was kind of the driving force. And I said, and I wanted to work for a school. I wanted to find an institution where there was this kind of tradition of philanthropy embedded in the culture of the place. And he said, and he wanted remote. He didn't want to be anywhere near an interstate. I think just like that was kind of for him, and he was much more familiar with this area and with the Berkshires. And so we were both very, very lucky to find jobs. We both landed jobs here at Williams in 2000. And I landed here, and I have to say the first couple of weeks I came home and I got in the shower and I sobbed. I thought I'd made another huge mistake, because it was otherworldly in so many ways. And now it's so funny to be able to admit and say that publicly. But it was
okay. Tell me more about that. Why? I mean, tell me more.
Well, I think these institutions are, they're like, I didn't understand I really just didn't, I guess ignorance is bliss, but I recognize the role that Williams plays in the kind of notion of, which I hate the word elite, but elite higher education. And there's a huge amount of pride about that among our alumni and the people that work at the college. And so I just had to learn it. But I kept being told by a couple people who are no longer work in development. So maybe I'm not going to, of course, name names, but they said, you have to learn the Williams way. There's a Williams way of doing things. There's a Williams. And that just drove me nuts, because as time went on, and it takes a while to feel like you're of a place, and for you to believe in it and for it to believe in you. And that, so I had to be patient and learn it. And by the way, my husband was loving it. Like he had a great team, and that colleagues decided, and so he would come home and say, I love it. This is so fun. And I can't believe this place. And so it was very funny. But I think I learned that the Williams way is the way that many institutions do this work. And there's more than one way to do it. And Williams benefited from, I think, some of the ideas and thoughts that I had coming from other types of institutions that are forced to be hungry because of their resource constraints. And so that was a nice blend. I think we met each other in the middle, so to speak.
When did it start to click? I mean, were there early experiences? You shared some of the challenges, but did you have, on the other side, I mean, you wanted to work at a place where there's a culture of philanthropy. There are a few places that would rival Williams in that regard. What was that like on the positive? I mean, when did things really start to move in the right direction?
I think when I got out on the road and started learning about Williams from the alumni. And I remember meeting with some of my favorite alums to this day who they would really help me understand what the role that this institution plays in the lives of individuals from the moment they step on campus and throughout their lives. And that was really powerful. And seeing the impact, this outsized impact of individuals, whether they're raising their own kids or working in their local communities, to having, kind of highly visible roles and jobs and in the world. It's incredible. I mean, we have 30,000 alumni, and what they accomplish and how they approach it. And it all comes back to the education that they received when they were here. And that's really, really cool.
And when it almost sounds like they were selling you on Williams. I mean, you're the development professional out there supposed to, inspire people to think big and find their passions and make an impact. It almost sounds like it was role reversal.
Well, that was their role in the beginning. These were like, our leadership volunteers and donors. I think one of the things I absolutely love about this work, and I think I hope it's true for the majority of the people that are doing it, no matter where the institution, we're in learning communities. So that doesn't exempt us from learning too, and growing and discovering things about ourselves in this role. And that, I mean, to be in at an institution where that's their primary role and you get to benefit from that in your own way, I think is pretty wonderful, in addition to contributing in the ways that you're expected to.
So you got comfortable and were successful in that tight-knit elite liberal arts, deep philanthropic tradition, and then found a slightly different shade of purple to go when you joined Amherst College, which some of you may know is for sure the chief rival of Williams College. And so what was that like? Was it a hard decision? Certainly an amazing career opportunity. I don't know, maybe it's just, it's a job, you made a move, or was it more emotional than that?
I think I haven't until now, until you've given me this opportunity to be on your podcast, really thought about how it's another one of those ignorance is bliss decisions that, a headhunter called me and said, this is a possibility. And I thought I'd been at Williams for about 7 years, and we were in a campaign. Everything was crazy successful. I certainly wasn't interested in leaving, and things were great. I love the team and the volunteers and the leaders that I worked with. And yet, you shouldn't close the door. I guess it goes back to like when Ron called and said, come and consider this. And so I answered the phone and returned the phone call, whatever. And then the next thing I know, I have an offer. So it was really, and my husband had been traveling for admission. He said, do not make a decision until I come home, because we need to talk about this. And I think I just thought, this is an opportunity. Like, how can I say no to this? And so it was not planned. It was just like blind, I don't know, which is probably really disappointing.
No, I appreciate the honesty, because I think there are a lot of folks listening who maybe have aspirations for leadership someday, and maybe have it picked, have an image in their mind of things being more intentional or more kind of on plan. And so I would be curious to know, there is always a balance of staying, really focused and committed to a given role. And you'd spent 7 years at Williams, but how do you know even when to take the headhunter call, or to maintain, do you maintain those relationships, or what advice would you have to people listening just around, that balance of staying focused versus staying open-minded?
Yeah, I think, when I look back at that time, and I've really learned over the years, I've gotten to know a couple of really wonderful recruiters, just whether we've hired them to search for positions that we're looking for, or there's outreach, or I've referred others to them. What a wonderful resource.
Can I ask, Megan,
yeah,
who some of those firms or people are? I'm curious, and we're certainly looking to build, maybe we would host one of them on the show someday.
Yeah, I think Jill Lastman is one of my favorites. She's somebody I really trust her judgment and her assessment of the places that she works with and how she characterizes them is one person that comes to mind. So that's Lindauer. And anyway, I think I've that time I just thought I need to learn what this is. I didn't even know what I think a lot of people are expert at kind of taking those calls, and I certainly wasn't. I think there's a lot of opportunities that present themselves out there, but you usually push the lead, or you kind of return a phone call and say I'm happy. But for whatever reason, I just thought I just need to figure this out. And of course I knew Amherst. That was so that's probably why. How it worked.
And I imagine, given how tight knit the liberal arts community is, you probably knew people who worked there or had gotten to know people. It wasn't like when you first went to Williams and you were kind of coming from a cold start without many ties. You were now sort of a part of this liberal arts community. Is that fair? Or
I knew a couple people, but not well. I knew.
Got it.
I knew. So when I was hired, a couple of the folks in the development office, we certainly knew each other from conferences over the years, but not well. Yeah. It was. I arrived there and it was another one of those kind of finding my way. I certainly did a lot of research and understood what I was getting into, but it was you have to learn a whole new
So
community, and
at the 2 week mark, how are you feeling? Like intense doubt, or did it feel more natural that time?
it wasn't doubt at all. I never doubted it, but it was an overwhelming, like, wow, I have a big job. And I don't think I understood what it meant to be in that role, to be a member of the senior staff. I had a very close relationship with Steve Burrell, who was the vice president at Williams, and it's just a great boss and coach for me over the years. And so, but I don't think I appreciated really the scope of his job. It was very myopic.
What are some of the observations you had when it was your job and it was a big job and maybe bigger than you realized? What are the blind spots maybe that other folks might have as they think about making that leap?
I think the public part of it, how it's really front facing, and that's something I've had to grow into. And I'm probably only just now mildly becoming comfortable with it. I mean, even doing something like this, that I don't think I understood the expectation. And I've always been a manager that I see my role as advocating for my team. So that was an easy part of it. But then on the senior staff, how much time you spend and how much you get into the really the center of the institution, the core of it, and all the different aspects of it, and the things and that's another example where I feel like you're always growing, because you're dealing with sometimes like philosophical things that you have to like really weigh the different pros and cons of whatever you're undertaking at an institution before, and how you communicate about it and things like that. It's just and that's intense, and it doesn't, you don't leave it at your desk at night.
I know, in a big job like that with such a broad scope and leadership of, one of the significant revenue operations at a college, and leading a campaign, you get to have a lot of neat experiences. You get to meet some pretty amazing people, I'm sure, on the journey. But what are some of either the people, places, experiences you've had where you just think, wow, like this all started in a student call center in Ohio? I mean, this is pretty amazing.
I'm not gonna drop names, but I would say that at least once a day, if I'm watching the news or reading the New York Times, or it's like, wow, I know that person, or I work with them, or I asked them for a gift or whatever, or they volunteer. Like, it's just, I got to know them. I got to hear them lecture, or they're a leader on our board or whatever. Like I do, that blows my mind. That like, it's just, it sounds so silly, and but it's true. You're right.
I love it. And so just tell me a little bit, when you think about the experience at Amherst, what you're proud of, having grown into that chief advancement role, navigating the broader scope maybe that you hadn't fully appreciated. But when you think back to that almost 10 years, what really stands out?
I think the thing I'm most proud of is when I got there, everybody said, oh, Williams has all the money because all their alums go into investment banking, and we all become teachers and professors, or we go into that's what our alumni do. So, or they go into more service oriented. And I thought, this can't be true. These two institutions you'll never find two institutions that are more alike than in many ways than Williams and Amherst. So I thought it just can't be true. So we dug in and we discovered so many alums who were definitely, it was the prospect pool turned out to be as good and as strong as what Williams is. And at the end of the campaign, 2/3 of all the donors over 100K were first-time donors at that level. And I was really, really proud of that. I mean, that wow. And it was a total team effort. And we discovered and inspired people who are now on the board there, and who had just become real leaders for Amherst. And they didn't even know that that was a possibility in their future. So I absolutely love that.
Megan, can you tell me more about that? Because I think that kind of, inspiring somebody, challenging them, encouraging them to make that first major gift at that kind of six-figure type level is sort of a big open space in a lot of giving pyramids. And I'm curious if it was just identifying the people and the basic blocking and tackling of getting out there and having the conversations, or were there, I don't know, creative packages or scholarships or programs that you established that made it kind of aspirational, but accessible for people who otherwise either might not have given or more likely were giving $1,000 a year, $500 a year to the annual fund?
I mean, I think in that particular campaign, and it's true for all successful campaigns, it had a really strong case and a, kind of we at the time, I mean, it straddled two presidents, but Tony Marks was the president when we launched the campaign. They had announced the first time they've received a gift of $100 million, and that really sparked the interest and kind of wonderment, I think, of a lot of people. So we were able to leverage the momentum that provided, and that $25 million gift followed that. And then the case for what Tony was doing. He loved to fundraise, and so that made it fun for the gift officers. And they went out there and they pounded the pavement and knocked on doors and created a really, what was kind of an unwieldy thing to staff, but worthwhile army of volunteers, which anybody who has worked for me during the last, not this most recent Williams campaign, but the one before I went to Amherst and then the Amherst campaign will tell you, like, we will never do that again, which is recruit a lot of volunteers, have to manage them. But those are the people that became those six-figure plus donors, and we involved them in the kind of making of the campaign.
I think on one hand, there might be an impression that or maybe there was even a misperception among your team at Amherst. Maybe it's been similar at Williams at times. Maybe, but let's just go back to the Amherst example, where there was this kind of maybe perception that there wasn't as much wealth or as many kind of undiscovered prospects or relationships out there to be built. It's a tight-knit community. It's small. Everybody knows everybody. Yet it sounds like there were a lot of surprises. And I'm just curious, when you think about leaving no stone unturned or really trying to go deeper into the giving pyramid, if that was a surprise to you, or if was it rooted in data? Was it gut feel? Was it you found some examples and then started wondering, are there more people like this? Because I feel like that's the part of the giving pyramid that is a bit of a mystery for many of our friends in this community.
I mean, honestly, it's just curiosity and starting to ask questions, and then working with our research department to say, let's look at these, and knowing that when you start to work with one person who is maybe a director at a private equity firm, and you have seven others, and they're rated wildly differently, tell me why that is, and right. Really asking ourselves, maybe we should take a deeper look and consider what their potential is, and then start from there. So it's real. I love to ask questions. I'm always kind of just critiquing and wondering, and that's what we did.
I love it. And after a really good run, you completed the boomerang back to Williams. What's the story there?
It's a well-worn path between the two institutions. I think I started, so my, one of the things, this is kind of a personal tangent, but during the time that I was at Amherst, my daughter had a very bizarre health thing happen, and that led me to really think about other opportunities, like looking at the hospital, just thinking maybe I should leave the liberal arts world, and because we had a great, she's fine, she's thriving and wonderful, but like we were at Boston Children's and Spalding, and so it got me thinking about, and I started to talk to some folks again, and both recruiters and other folks in our profession across industries, which I'd never done before. And then I came to realize that this is where my sweet spot is, and it is the fit for me, and I still had a lot of growing and learning to do. And then at the same time, I got the call from Williams who said, "Would you consider looking at this position?" And I thought, well, why? I have that job already, like I have it at Amherst, and they said, well, just come and meet the president and the search committee and see. And then I started, I don't know, something kind of sparked my interest, and then all of a sudden I really wanted the job, which was probably the first time other than the Redlands moment, because I never take anything for granted, where I thought I will be disappointed if this doesn't happen, and it did happen, and so then all of a sudden, and I thought Amherst was about to launch a campaign, and if I was going to stay, then it would be another probably 10 years, which is fine. That would have been fine too. But if I was going to make a move, this was the time to do it. So that's what happened. And Williams was just in the last third of their campaign when I walked in.
You had left Williams to join Amherst in 2007. You came back in 2017. It's a 10-year period. You left kind of right as the financial crisis was getting underway. You came back maybe in the midst of a tech boom and strong real estate markets, and then certainly things have changed a lot in the last year. But I'm just curious, it's an institution with a lot of culture, tradition, beautiful campus. It's been around for hundreds of years. How different did it feel with a 10-year break?
It felt really fresh, which was fun to think of a place that like you said, is just steeped in tradition. And it felt like there was a vibrancy here that I hadn't noticed maybe when I arrived in 2000. And that was, I think, as a result of good leadership after good leadership, Morty Shapiro and then Adam Falk. And there were very familiar faces in the college relations team, and also so many new faces. So that was interesting and different. And it was just, there was so much that had happened, and it became much more, I think, professionalized as a development shop. Not that it ever wasn't, but it was just evolving. It wasn't sitting still. And that was fun to experience, because this is an institution that many people love when they arrive here. And all these people who had been here and now they're now, they were here when I left and still here, and they've grown with the position. They haven't become stagnant or complacent. And that was kind of fun to learn about that.
Are there certain areas, we hear this comment about the professionalization, that over the years it's become more professional. It's a common refrain among our guests, but I'm curious if there are specific aspects of the work that you viewed as being the most professionalized over this period, or areas that are maybe still yet to be more professionalized that you expect might evolve in the coming years?
Yeah, I think I definitely like the frontline fundraising, just built upon those that had come before them. And I think that they just, the way Williams does events really well, and getting just the engagement piece. And then this campaign, in addition to fundraising, was about engagement. So, at the end of it, we had 87% of our alumni engaged in the college in some way or another during that time. And about 74.3% made a gift. So that's extraordinary, especially with all the challenges we have, all of our institutions, of getting those gifts. And
just for those listening, Megan did say 87% engagement and roughly 74.3% giving over the course of the campaign. But that is maybe somewhat unique to Williams. But I think one of the things I love about working with Williams is it's not automatic. You've still got it. Like you still are setting aspirational goals that are not easy. They might be, the starting point might be different than other institutions, but you're not just saying, let's do what we did last year. And I know you've been really intentional, and your team has been intentional about continuing to push for even more excellence in spite of being viewed as being the top. And I think that's really inspiring for a lot of folks, no matter where they are on participation and engagement at their shops.
And we learn from so many other institutions and what they're doing. I mean, that's...
who do you learn from? I mean, who does Williams look up to from an advancement perspective?
Well, it just depends on what the program is. But, I think I turn to some of the folks that I'm close with, who are my counterparts, like at Holy Cross, Tracy Barlock, and what they're doing. I learn a lot. Kenyon is another institution, Carleton. So it's everywhere. And then kind of benefiting from partnerships that we've made through Evertrue and other types of firms. That Plus Delta was I think a great asset and we really made the most of an opportunity with that group. So but we're fortunate to have the types of resources to be able to do those things and use them wisely. And we have, as you said, Laura Day, who's probably, we share in common. She's one of my favorite people. And in the profession. Like they're just hungry to do more and to solve the dilemma or the whatever the thing is that we're trying to overcome or achieve. And that's fun.
Well, let's talk about one other aspect of the work, and certainly the connection between engagement and fundraising has always been important. I think that Williams objectively has been doing that longer than just about anyone else, or maybe longer than anyone else. Tell me a little bit about this bicentennial, right? 200 years of alumni association or alumni engagement at Williams.
So tonight we're going to actually at 8:00 we're having the Society of Alumni Bicentennial premiere. We're kicking it off, and it's a year-long celebration, marking the moment when some faculty took the books from Williams and went over the mountain and started Amherst College, and alumni got together and said we have to save Williams, and they did, and they've been doing it ever since. They've been supporting Williams ever since, and so that's Laura. Laura can add more. Having listened to her podcast interview, she has much more detail to add, but that's the crux of it. And it's a really fun story. And this is a moment where I'm so excited for this year and what the alumni relations team has done and how they're inspiring people across our campus to be a part of it and celebrate our alumni and also recognize how we've changed over the generations and how we're going to be changing even more as our demographics and student body changes, and how we prepare for that and how we recognize that it wasn't always rosy for every student and therefore every alum. And we want to kind of acknowledge that and embrace it, just as we embrace all the good stuff too. So that's what this year is about. And there's a lot of great programming. I encourage people to kind of go to our website and try to take advantage of accessing as much as you can if you want to see how a truly talented group of people pivoted from a well thought out plan of tons of volunteers, strong leadership at the volunteer and staff level, to have in-person events and then have COVID hit and move completely to virtual. It's been amazing.
Honestly, I'm just so happy to hear your enthusiasm and positivity. It's not like, it's too bad that we have to do it this way, that we're in COVID or whatever. I mean, it sounds like you're just genuinely excited that the alternative hybrid pivoted approach is going to be great, and it's going to be great for your community. And you're probably going to be able to reach people who will be able to be a part of it who otherwise might not have been. And that's maybe a silver lining here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's definitely a silver lining.
So in the spirit of pivoting and reconsidering things around COVID, we have talked a lot about gift officer travel, the ability to engage donors remotely, the potential to be more efficient because we're not spending all that time and money and energy on the road. But there also is an environmental component that you brought up in our pre-call that I don't think has really been discussed. And I don't want to overstate how much you all have thought about it, but it is a real priority, just given how much climate change is being elevated as a key priority for society, for the world, for a new administration, et cetera. And a lot of colleges have had really stated environmental objectives or green initiatives that, let's be honest, don't align very well with gift officer visit goals, at least not when they were doing so by way of various airlines. And so just tell me a little bit your perspective on the broad efficiency and ability to engage constituents remotely, but maybe the potential environmental impact.
Yeah, so I think what I mentioned to you in our pre-call was that we, as part of our strategic plan, we have some sustainability goals, and part of it is our carbon emission reduction. And the biggest the kind of influencer of that is airline travel. And we are, along with admission and a couple other areas, are the kind of heaviest users. So we've been asked to partner with our provost and our Center for Environmental Studies and our Zilka Center to think through how we could contribute to reducing and making a difference. And that's scary for our team, but I'm glad that they were asked to to be educated together and then think through how we can make those changes and really use some lessons and learn from this year to complement some of the in-person travel. I have no idea how it'll go or how we're gonna roll it out, but I think I'm glad that we're on the ground and we were asked to be partners versus just having something imposed on us. So that, we'll let you know, stay tuned. But I'm excited about it. I don't know how, things will be different after this, but everyone says, oh, we can do more in like virtual meetings, but I keep thinking, but that we're all going to be going out to eat. We're all going to have evening plans again eventually. So, how are we going to make it a blended ecosystem between virtual and in person, and how to do that really well? We're going to have to rely on learning from each other to make that happen. So.
Have you as a leader, or maybe by way of your colleagues, or even through your collaborations with the president or other leaders on campus, have you had any virtual experiences or maybe visits by way of Zoom that have been really successful, or that maybe helped open your eyes to the potential to engage people in this manner, or maybe experiences where you're feeling like, I really just need to be there in person because it's truly not the same?
No, I think we have great examples where it's kind of, we need to meet, let's meet, and it gets done. And all of a sudden, you decide that on Monday, and by Friday, you've already been in front of the donor or the couple or whomever to address whatever it is. And then you're doing the contact report right after you hang up, and you're getting like the next steps in line instead of like running to the next office and going right into the next visit. So I think there's great examples of that. And also, like the opportunity to just meet with the president right before face-to-face and have that strategy session. And then afterward, I don't know, there's a lot of efficiency in this. But
what about bringing in like faculty or other people who could never go on that visit with you? Have you had any opportunities to try that yet?
Yep. Yeah, we've definitely had some partnership visits. Gift officers are doing that all the time. And on Monday, I have an appointment with a faculty member and a foundation to update them and make an ask. So it's, yes, absolutely. And I think it's weird sometimes. When you think about it, that this person's sitting in their living room or their office in their attic, and here I am in mine, and we're calling this up. I don't know. It's just, and right before this call, I actually had with a former trustee who's a star fundraising volunteer for us. She and I met with somebody else who happened to be on Martha's Vineyard today. So.
I love it. Yeah, I think that the combination of just speed and pace, right? Sometimes the visit schedule and when we could get to LA or when we could get to New York sort of drove the pace of the conversation in an arbitrary way. And now I think there's just way less friction to do things faster. And I think that has great potential to support revenue growth over time. And then certainly the ability to be more collaborative and to create a better donor experience by involving people who realistically either could not have traveled with you or with your team, or if they could, it would have taken 4 months to figure out a time when schedules could all be aligned. And I think those are two areas that I hope we can kind of take with us going forward.
Me too.
You, one comment you made, and we will, start to wrap up here. I want to be sensitive of your time and really appreciate everything you've shared so far. But we asked you if you could, change one thing about advancement, what would it be? And you said it isn't rocket science, but some people in advancement will lead you to think it is. Now, you've probably worked with some rocket scientists over the years at Amherst and Williams, and so you know what that means. What do you mean by that comment, though? And what is it if it's not rocket science?
It's doing the work. I think that this there's so many there are so many other professions and careers that can easily translate into doing the work that we do. It is sales, and it's listening, and it's thinking, and it's asking, and then listening and responding. So I think sometimes I've worked for people who this is all they've done, and this is all I've done. But I think some of the best hires I've made are people that have come from other industries and brought with them a pace and a level of a way of doing things and an experience that has just really elevated their own success at the work, and also the people that surround them.
So when you think about the people who have been the most successful, or the people that you think of if you were building your dream team of advancement professionals? Are there common characteristics or traits or skills that you've observed? Sounds like just doing the work is one of them.
I think people who are really curious and they have ambition in them to see something through, and they follow through, and they're open to all kinds of different experiences and types of people, and not one size fits all, and so they're ready to be nimble and pivot with a situation, and they're able to translate the mission and the goals of the institution, and represent them to and to present them in the forms that make sense to whomever they're speaking to about it. So I don't know. I think it's communications. It's all those things.
In the spirit of team building, are you all hiring right now? I know it's been a pause or a freeze for many folks this year and last year, but where are you on that?
So we've been frozen since COVID started. We did one hire, which was to hire our director of our Women's Giving Initiative, which is something that we launched after this last campaign, and I was able to kind of advocate for my team and persuade the powers that be that this was important. So she started in June. Otherwise, we're waiting for the college to let us know when we can go ahead and proceed with some of our frozen positions. So not actively yet, but I hope so soon.
Love it. Well, if folks that are listening want to stay in touch with you, Megan, what's the best way? I know you're on LinkedIn. Any other channels you prefer?
Yeah, or you know where to find me by email from our website. I'd be happy to chat, and I've benefited from the wisdom and kindness and valuable time of others throughout my career, and welcome to return the favor.
Well, thank you for sharing a lot of that wisdom today. And I will say I want to make sure you're able to get well prepared for the 200th premiere. For those of you listening, if you are also in the midst of planning a big, now virtual or hybrid type celebration, check out alumni.williams.edu/200. It's really a beautiful site with a great set of activities upcoming. And I have no doubt in the spirit of copy and steal everything that there will be folks watching very closely. So Megan, congratulations on that. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the best here in 2021.
Likewise. Take care.
Cheers.